So, hopefully, this should be a quick one here. The last video I posted up was me updating the Deadly Infections mod, and at the end of it, I went into how to add sandbox options to your mod. But I didn't realize my camera was in the way and all sorts of stuff, and I didn't really get to do it, so we'll just do a quick little how-to video here. Let's see, let me get rid of Deadly Infections. I want to put on, we're going to use Scent of Blood for this one to kind of give you an example here, right? And so if you don't know what sandbox options are, what I mean is when you go to start a game, when you're like hosting a game or you're first starting one up, you go into your sandbox options and it's like the amount of zombies, you know, like how strong or fast they are, all that kind of stuff. Well, you can also add, like if I go here to host, right? And do my settings, edit my settings. See, look, DM Scent of Blood. I've got it right there, right? And now in Scent of Blood, I only have 3 options, but you can have as many options as you want, right? So I have blood detection range. I don't know if you can read this, but the maximum range that zombies can detect blood. In the Scent of Blood mod, zombies can smell your blood, and so if you're bleeding or if you have bloody bandages, they'll come after you, even if they can't see or hear you, because they can smell you. So then we've got 2 true or false options here. Enable deep wounds only. What that means is that zombies will only detect, they'll only come after you if you're bleeding from a deep wound. That's if you want kind of like a nicer version. But enable bloody bandages should zombies detect dirty blood-soaked bandages. You know, so if you have that enabled, then when your bandages are bloody and they're dirty, that's the same as you having an open wound. You know, they can smell the blood on the bandages. But so whatever we do with these options, it's going to change how the mod works, right? So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to show you how to get that into your mod. It's actually really easy. And then just real quick, I'll show you how to implement it into your mod, right? We'll go into Scent of Blood. Let me go ahead and open that up, actually. Scent of Blood. Okay, I got that open there. So there's two things you're gonna need. All right. So in your mod folder, you've got your Lua folder with your client, shared, and server. Sometimes also you have a server folder in there. Outside of that Lua, you want this. It's just a text document, .txt, sandbox-options, sandbox options. And then you need, in your translate English folder, sandbox_en, right, your English. And where you find that one is, so your Sandbox Options is right outside of your Lua folder, right? And then if you go in, if you click into shared, translate, you'll see EN. If you have other languages, they'll be like FR, CN, RU, you know what I mean? Like other languages, but EN is for English, and inside you'll find that. In your mod, you probably don't have this folder. You'll find it in other mods. If you don't have it, you can either pull one from another mod, or you can just create a text file in the proper folder, right? So for this one, you'll have your shared, translate, English, sandbox, EN. So let's take a look at those real quick. This is the actual Scent of Blood mod. So here we have, this is the one that's outside of your Lua folder. All right, this one here, Sandbox Options. It's got to be named Sandbox-Options. It's got to be a .txt document. And here's how you write this out. So first thing you start with is just going to type out version equals 1 comma, right? And then, oops. And then you write for your first one. So let's see, let's get rid of these for right now. Or let's do the true false one first, because that's going to be easier to explain. So let's get rid of these other ones for right now. So as you can see here, all you have is it says option, and then for this one, because it's Scent of Blood, DG Scent of Blood .bloody bandage, and I'll explain that here in a second. And then you have your brackets, right? And inside of it, it's going to say type equals Boolean, as in true or false. Your default is set to, for me, it's set to false by default. You can set that to true. If you want it to be true by default, you know, when somebody doesn't change the settings, then you can set it to true, whatever you want. The page, that is it's talking about this in here, the physical page, right? Like what page it's going to be. So for Scent of Blood, what we did is, you know, you want DG Scent of Blood. And then the translation, which this is talking about, this part here, is your DG Scent of Blood _ Bloody Bandage, right? So, like, this is how you set up your options. It's pretty easy to do. And so let me go over here, but let's start with your Sandbox EN. And this one's super simple too, right? So, like, you just type Sandbox _ EN if you're starting a new one, equals, start your brackets and your brackets, right? And everything's going to go in here. And so in order to do yours, you're going to do Sandbox _ let's say, we're just going to call it my mod, right? It was what your tag is what it's going to be, right? And you're going to title it here. What you call it here is what's going to show up right here. See where it says DM : Scent of Blood? It's like the title of your page, right? So we're going to call it my sweet cool mod, right? All right, so now that is like the stem of all your stuff, right? The Sandbox _ my mod _ and so now from here, what you're doing is these are going to be your options, right? So like if we look back at the Sandbox options, I've got 3 options that I wanted to do for Scent of Blood. I wanted to have whether or not bloody bandages were a thing. I wanted to have whether or not deep wounds were a thing, and I wanted to have how far the blood range, like the scent travels, right? So as you can see, I've got 2, 2, 2. That's 3 options, right? You've got what the option is called, and then you've got the tooltip that comes up. And the tooltip being when I hover over it, you know, what it says there. So like, some people don't put tooltips at all. That drives me nuts because you never know what somebody did. You should put your tooltip in and let a player knows what they're getting into when they select these. You know what I mean? When you hover over, it's very disappointing when you're a user and you hover over something because you're not quite sure what exactly they mean by it, and then nothing pops up because somebody didn't put in a tooltip. Always put in a little tooltip, just so you can explain any nuances that might happen. So for our my mod, right? Let's say that like we're gonna do 2 options for this. We're gonna do one with the true false and one with the integers, right? Or the numbers. So let's say I want my mod to be we'll just do like the Scent of Blood thing, right? Keep it on track here. So we're gonna say like range, okay? That's gonna be what our option is called, just range. And so we're gonna say the range of, or we'll call it mod range, right? So that's what it will show up as the option. And then we're gonna do Sandbox _ my mod _ range _ tooltip. All right, and we're gonna say how far the mod goes or does stuff. Right. Okay, so right now that's set up. Boom. That's technically all I need for that one, right? But we're gonna go ahead and add. Let's go ahead and do the other one too while we're in here. Sandbox _ my mod _ what was it? So that was range. Let's call this one on off. Right? Whether or not something's on or off. Mod range. We'll call it mod light switch. Right? Just keep in your mind that it's something that goes on off. Then we go into Sandbox _ memad _ on off _ tooltip. Whether or not the mod's light switch is off, we'll say. All right. So those are our 2 things. Like, so that's what I'm going to show you. So we're going to find a page that says my sweet cool mod, and in that page we'll find something that says mod range. How far does the mod do stuff? and we'll find something that says mod light switch, right? So let's go ahead and replace what we've got here. Boom, right? So that's for our My Sweet Cool mod. So that's our translation stuff. That's all our tooltips and like how it shows up, the words that show up and whatnot. And then this is what, this is going to control this part. So like everything, you can't see me when I cover the screen, but everything where it says that 3 over to the right. So where it says blood detection range, enable blood advantage, all that stuff, all the stuff over to the left, that was our sandbox_en settings, right? Like our tooltips and translation. Now we're dealing with the stuff on the right, like whether it's a true or a false thing, or whether I want to do 3 or 10, or I don't have numlock on, 3 or 10, or whatever I want to do. So that's what this part deals with, the Sandbox-Options outside of the Lua folder. So for this, now remember, let's get rid of this. So that's not what our thing is called anymore. It's not Scent of Blood. So we can get rid of those option names. Now, the options, it's referring to this, right? The Sandbox My Mod thing. And remember, these are our only 2 options, range and on-off. So let me get rid of one of these, right? Because I only need 2 options. Now, to take this. So one of my options was sandbox underscore my mod underscore range, right? But it's written a little bit differently over here. What we're gonna do is, so that was range, that was for our number 1, right? What you want to do is you want to get rid of the underscores, or get rid of the sandbox, right? And then you want to get rid of the underscore and replace it with a period. Let's say mymod.range, right? And then we've got on off right here. All right, let's get rid of that thing that says sandbox. On off, right? Okay, so in this one, and I'm just going to type this out just in case you're typing it out so you can go on. So let's say you wanted to do it from scratch, right? And I got option my mod dot, we'll do on off first, right? We're going to squiggly bracket, right? Open and close that. And then in the middle, this is where all our stuff is. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Type, right? So the type of one we're doing here is we're going to do Boolean. So that's going to, and then comma to go to the next line. The default option for us, we're going to say that the default option is true. We want it on, right? And we'll let the player turn it off if they want to. So the page that we're referring to is the my mod, right? Because remember, like now if I get rid of that sandbox like I do over there, it's talking about that right there, right? And just like this, just like how this is this. See what I'm saying? That's how this works. So we're over here doing my mod off page, right? My mod translation. Right? And translation is referring to our sandbox underscore en page. So I want my mod underscore, because it's talking about this one over here, right? And for this is on off. Right? So this, I can take this, even though this is exactly the same thing pretty much, I can put that there now, right? So that's going to be our on-off one. Let's do the range one here, like we see up here, right? So we're going to do another option, my mod dot. So for this one, we're doing the range, and we want to do an integer, right? We want to give you a value between 1 and 10, okay, of how far the range can go. So get our squigglies. All right. So for this one, if you're going to do a number, you're going to want to say an integer, right? All right. And then here, you're going to do your minimum is as small as it can go, which is 1, right? Because we want 1 to 10. Your max as high as it can go, 10, and it could be whatever you want, man. Like it could be 50, it could be 100. You know, whatever you want to do. For this, we're doing 10. The default, that's going to be, we'll say our default's 5, right in the middle. And then now it's wanting to know what page this is on. So we're going my mod, and it wants to know that translation again. Oops. Right, so we go my mod, and for this one, this is range. There we go. So let's get rid of this old one here. Boom. And that's what you gotta do. Now the question is, like, how do you use this in your mod, right? So let's go back to Sin of Blood. Alright, we'll do it right here, that's fine. So, okay, cool. Here's a perfect example. So, for our integer, right? And now, if you remember, I'm going to... Let me copy this one. So, these are our... We're going back to Sin of Blood here. I'm going to paste this way down here. Alright, that's our stuff. I'm on off. So, in Sin of Blood, and I'm sorry for not having a mod ready. I was just trying to show this for you real quick. So I'm hoping that you get what we're doing here. I just showed you how to write it out yourself, but now what I'm going to show you is how it works. So I'm going back to the Sin of Blood stuff. That's how you write all that for your own mod, right? But now let's pretend, for the sake of this example, that your mod is Sin of Blood, okay? So like blood range, remember that's the mymod.range and stuff like that. So inside your mod, what you're gonna have is you're gonna use it. If it's a true false, you're probably gonna use it. You're gonna use it in an if then statement, right? So if let's see, here's one. So if this is for the deep wounds option, right? And if you remember, our deep wounds idea was if it's on, if it's off, should they detect only from deep wounds? So in the code of the plugin, or the mod, sorry, it's if deep wound check, or so deep wound check is, here it is. Right, so we created a variable called deep wound check that checks target body parts, and it sees if any of the body parts is deep wounded, right? So this says if deep wound check equals false. So if there are no deep wounds, and check this out, sandbox vars dot, you recognize this? DG sin of blood dot deep wounds equals true, then oh, there's a debug in there I didn't get rid of. Look at that. Somewhere somebody is doing this. Alright, so it's saying if deep wounds check is false, so if they have no deep wounds and deep wounds option is turned on, if it equals true, then triggers to blood scent equals false, right? Which means it's not going to go off at all if they don't have any deep wounds. So what you do for this, right? Let's go ahead and copy this out. So inside of your mod, it's looking for your variables, right? So in that one, that was one of ours. But on the my mod thing, right? One of our options was my mod dot on off, right? So what it's looking for is your mod options, right? See? So the way you do that is you go sandbox vars, as in variables, dot, what's your option, right? Which one are we talking about? Because your options are just variables in here. So the first one was my mod on off, right? Well, maybe I want my mod dot range, okay? And so for Sin of Blood, it would be right, sandbox vars DG scent of blood dot blood range, right? Oh, capital B, sorry. All right, so now that's going to refer to my blood range and my scent of blood thing, right? Which you can see here. So, like, for example, the way that I get them to smell the blood in the game, because there's not actually blood smelling, is, and you can't even tell, like, I think that if you listen really closely, you can kind of hear like like the footsteps, but what I'm doing is I'm triggering player footstep sounds, and I control how far the sound travels with that variable blood range, right? So the average range is 3. So like if I'm bleeding, zombies will smell me, hear me from 3 tiles away, right? But if I set it up to 10, then they're gonna hear me, smell me from 10 tiles away, right? Whatever I put in there. And because of the nature of this, since you're just doing that variable, if a player changes their sandbox settings mid-game, it's fine, because it's whatever that variable is, right? It's not going to mess up. Like, they change the variable through the sandbox settings, they're fine. So, this is how you would use an integer, okay? So, like, for this, technically, what this is really saying is that since I have a 3 in there, it's saying that I want a footstep sound to go 3. But if somebody had put 7, right, then it would actually be 7. If somebody had put 10, it would be 10. It's just asking how far it wants me to go, right? And you can even do stuff like that plus 5, right? Maybe I want it to be the range of whatever they put in here plus 5, right? So by default, what the computer's doing is it's reading it as 3 plus 5, or maybe they put in 7 plus 5 or 10 plus 5, right? So you just basically you use that variable as a number if it's the integer, right? Wherever you need a number. And then the on-off one, pretty obvious. That's a right. So like where's our on-off? So for our on-off, you know, if you wanted to use that in code, like for example, like let's say that I wanted this to fire off every 1 minute, but only if somebody got the option, right? So, right, like what I would wind up doing is I want to stick this events part in an if-then statement. So if sandbox vars dot mymod dot on off, right? If it's on, if equals true, then, all right, and we nest that in our little if statement, right? So now this will only fire off if the player has their sandbox settings set to true on there, right? Or if I want it, yeah, you could say like does not equal true, or if it equals false, right? Or if not, right? Like whatever you want to do with that, with that true stuff there. But so that's how you do it, man. That's all you got to do. It's not as bad as you might think, right? So like for our blood range here, right? What if I wanted our thing, right? I'd put sandbox vars dot mymod dot range, right? If I wanted to use that one. But yeah, that's how you do it, man. That's it. And you'll see it'll come up here. I'm sorry I didn't show you exactly, but the only other thing I can think of you might run into doing that is if you have a pre-existing mod, you add these changes and then you go in, for it to show up in your host thing here, right? It needs to be like right here on this screen when you start the game. You need to go in through this side and make sure that it's enabled in here, okay? And then when you back out, you'll see the loading Lua, and then you should see it. If it's still not popping up and you did everything right, then turn off Project Zomboid and turn it back on. It needs to just reload the Lua stuff. But other than that, man, that's it. It's super simple, super easy, and you just put it in there, and it'll let you, you know, let you be a little, throw some options in there, you know. But all right, man. Gonna do some more videos and stuff like that, try and figure out what people are wanting to see, and hopefully this helps somebody out. And take it easy. See you guys next time.